All right, social time is done. Time for Bible class. There should be some right there. Oh, no, we got more here.
Well, I need 3, so
I'll
take 3 for...
You want a large print or a regular print?
These are regular print?
Yep.
I'll take 2 of those and 1 of the large.
There you go.
Oh, bigger book. Got it.
I appreciate you restating the questions and answers from here. When you're watching online, you cannot hear one single thing unless someone shouts, which of course nobody does.
Right, and yeah, this is the only microphone hooked up to up there, so I try to do that. So I'm glad to hear that that's working. Good. The lesson guides and there are a couple Bibles, if anybody needs them yet, they're on the little ledge there. Why don't we get this show on the road, and we will begin with prayer. Lord, open now my heart to hear, and through your word to me draw near. Let me your word heir pure retain, let me your child and heir remain. Amen. Today we are going to be covering, my original intention was to cover all of Absalom's conspiracy and rebellion and everything all in one shot, but that's covering like 3.5, 4 chapters of the Bible, and that just wasn't going to be feasible without just having you read the whole time. So we're splitting this up into 2 parts. So we're going to be covering 2 Samuel chapters 15 and 16 today. Next weekend, we're going to be covering chapters 17 and 18 and part of chapter 19 next time. So today we kind of get the setup and the initial, I guess you could say, rebellion and coup. And then next time it's going to be the preparation for the battle, which would bring everything to a head, and how everything after that exactly goes. So that's kind of the outline for what we have. And then we're going to close off our study of the life of David, again, by having a final look at what David does for the preparations for the building of God's temple. That's the plan, at least for now. Part of the deal here is that you have 2 Bible class teachers, both myself and Professor Cuck. We were originally planning on at the last week in January here being starting our new class. Professor Cuck told me we could push that off a week, but if something changes, what we're going to do is we're simply going to lop the last lesson of the life of David off of the end, and we'll get started with Romans right away, but that's only if that becomes absolutely necessary. Just to let you know what may or may not be coming up here in the future. For today, we're starting in 2 Samuel chapter 15. We left off last week in 2 Samuel chapter 13. We covered last time what happened between Absalom and Amnon. Absalom's half-brother, had raped Absalom's full sister, Tamar, and Absalom ended up killing Amnon. He goes on the run. He moves away, goes back to the hometown of his mother, a place called Gesher. He stays there for 3 years. Eventually, through some, I guess you could call it deceitful, but Joab gets involved in this, and Joab, David's army commander, and he essentially puts somebody up to telling a false story to get David to think about what's actually going on with Absalom being, feeling like he has to stay away. So David eventually says, yeah, it's okay for Absalom to come back, but even after Absalom comes back, David would not let Absalom see his face for 2 years after being back. So it is 5 years, at least, that David and Absalom do not communicate or see one another. That's an important setup for us to understand. With that, I would have you look at the primer at the top of the sheet. It says, come up with what you think are the 3 defining qualities of a good political leader and the 3 defining qualities of a bad political leader. Because I'm guessing we are going to see each of these in 2 different people today. That's kind of the setup here. So think about it. What would you consider the 3 defining qualities of a good political leader and the 3 defining qualities, if we could even call them that, of a not good, a bad political leader? Give it some thought. Write down what you think. And you can even talk about it if you want with the people around you. What do you think? 3 defining qualities of a good political leader. You can just volunteer whatever you have as you would like. You can shout out one, you can shout out a couple, whatever you got. What do you think? 3 defining qualities of a good political leader. Tells the truth.
Transparency. Good planning and good decisions.
Good decisions. Good decisions for whom?
The country.
Okay. So honesty / openness / transparency does things that are going to benefit the greater populace. What else?
Communication with the constituents.
Okay, communication with the people. What else you got? Trustworthy. It has a heart for the people, is concerned about the people. Any others? Defining qualities for what would make a good political leader. Katie. Willing to confide in others. To what end, may I ask?
Maybe for advice.
Okay, yeah, getting advice, right? So understanding that, I may not know it all, so I'm going to gather around me people who are going to help me learn what I don't know. I think, Eleanor, one more. Okay, the ability to work with other foreign leaders in foreign countries. I think that's a good list of defining qualities of a good political leader. What about defining qualities, if we could call them that, of a bad political leader? Well, the opposite of everything we just said, Pastor.
Maybe silences opponents or different thoughts.
Okay, silences opponents.
Just wants power.
Just after power. Unwilling to compromise.
Hidden agendas.
Hidden agendas. Dishonesty. Any others? I think that's a pretty good list too. Be on the lookout for these. And overall, who fits what mold in this story? Like I said, we're going to be kind of covering this in two parts. And hopefully it's already kind of obvious which is going to be which. But let's get into 2 Samuel chapter 15. And again, the backdrop here is Absalom comes back from his 3 years in Geshur. It is 2 years before he even sees his father's face. And if you read 2 Samuel 14, you find out that in order to even get an audience with Joab, who he was going to use as kind of the go-between between him and his father, Absalom had to light Joab's fields on fire to even have a chance to talk to Joab. He tried to reach out, and he was getting denied. So, okay, well, if he's not going to talk to me, maybe he'll talk to me if I light his fields on fire. Okay, well. Anyway, 2 Samuel 15, follow along with me there if you would, please. In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anyone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him, "What town are you from?" And he would answer, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." And then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there's no representative of the king to hear you." And Absalom would add, "If only I were appointed judge in the land, then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that they receive justice." Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. While your servant was living at Geshur in Aram, I made this vow: if the Lord takes me back to Jerusalem, I will worship the Lord in Hebron." The king said to him, "Go in peace." And so he went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent secret messengers throughout the tribes of Israel to say, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpets, then say, 'Absalom is king in Hebron.'" 200 men from Jerusalem had accompanied Absalom. They had been invited as guests and went quite innocently, knowing nothing about the matter. While Absalom was offering sacrifices, he also sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, to come from Gilo, his hometown. And so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's following kept on increasing. A messenger came and told David, "The hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom." Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, "Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword." The king's officials answered him, "Your servants are ready to do whatever our lord the king chooses." The king set out with his entire household following him, but he left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. So the king set out with all the people following him, and they halted at the edge of the city. All his men marched past him, along with the Kerethites and Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittites who had accompanied him from Gath marched before the king. A Gittite is somebody from Gath, by the way. The king said to Ittai the Gittite, that's a fun name, "Why should you come along with us? Go back and stay with King Absalom. You are a foreigner, an exile from your homeland. You came only yesterday, and today shall I make you wander about with us? When I do not know where I am going? Go back and take your people with you. May the Lord show you kindness and faithfulness." But Ittai replied to the king, "As surely as the Lord lives and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king may be, whether it means life or death, there your servant will be." David said to Ittai, "Go ahead, march on." So Ittai the Gittite marched on with all his men and the families that were with him. The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved toward the wilderness. Zadok was there too, and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God. They set down the Ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until all the people had finished leaving the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Take the Ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the Lord's eyes, he will bring me back and let me see it again and his dwelling place again. But if he says, 'I'm not pleased with you,' then I am ready. Let him do to me whatever seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Do you understand? Go back to the city with my blessing. Take your son Ahimaaz with you, and also Abiathar's son Jonathan. You and Abiathar return with your 2 sons. I will wait at the fords in the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." So Zadok and Abiathar took the Ark of God back to Jerusalem and stayed there. But David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered and he was barefoot. All the people with him covered their heads too and were weeping as they went up. Now David had been told that Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. So David prayed, "Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness." When David arrived at the summit where the people used to worship God, Hushai the Archite was there to meet him, his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'Your Majesty, I will be your servant. I was your father's servant in the past, but now I will be your servant,' and you can help me by frustrating Ahithophel's advice. Won't the priests Zadok and Abiathar be there with you? Tell them anything you hear in the king's palace. Their 2 sons, Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, and Jonathan, son of Abiathar, are there with them. Send them to me with anything you hear." So Hushai, David's confidant, arrived at Jerusalem as Absalom was entering the city. Whew. Okay. By the way, I tried to shorten things up for this one, so we'll see if we go over time or not. Go through questions 1 through 4 on 2 Samuel chapter 15. Question 2 has you take special note of the key players in this account, and hopefully that will help us keep things straight and understand who's who and who's doing what. I'll give you some time to do that. You are highly encouraged to work with the people around you and talk to them about these things. All right. 2 Samuel chapter 15. Describe Absalom's actions in verses 1 through 6 with one word. And I know that may be a challenge, but that's why I'm having you narrow it down to one word. And I'm guessing we're probably going to get a variety of answers here. Describing Absalom's actions in verses 1 through 6 with one word and being able to explain your choice. Liz is chomping at the bit here. Conniving. Ooh, that's a good word. Why do you say conniving, Liz? Yep, he lied and twisted everything to just how he wanted. Conniving. Chris? Clever. We're going with the alliteration here. Conniving and clever.
Deceitful.
Deceitful.
Saying one thing and meaning another.
Okay, saying one thing meaning another. Hypocrite. Ooh. Why do you say hypocrite, Joyce?
When he's putting himself as to be a good thing for the people, when actually he's not. He's against his dad.
Okay, yeah. So he's trying to set himself up as something he's not. He's trying to set himself up as this person who is concerned about all the people, when really who's he concerned about? Absalom. What else you got, Megan?
You said clever and I said foolish.
You said foolish. Why do you say foolish?
Because it just seems silly that you would try to go against the king that God has put in place because it never worked out in the end. So it's just foolish that you think that that would work. And God would allow that.
Yep, keeping in mind that, for all the kings throughout history who have claimed divine authority, God put me here, that's actually a legit claim that David has, right? God put him into the kingship, so you are going against the Lord's anointed. You're not just going against the king, you're not just going against your father, you're going against God. You really think that's going to work out for you? Sue?
What I had is he was charismatic because he was, making himself out to be something that he wasn't, but the people were falling for it.
That's a great point. Sue said charismatic. Yes, he was making himself out to be something he wasn't, but the people were falling for it, weren't they? I mean, it's there clear as day in verse 6. And so he stole the hearts of the people. Success. I mean, give Absalom some credit. He's able to convince people. He's able to win people over. Any others? Good answers. Identifying the key players in this chapter, and these guys will come into play as we go through not just chapter 16, but also next week as we go through chapter 17 and 18 and part of 19 as well. Ahithophel, who is he and what does he do? He was, good use of the past tense there, David's counselor. But then, he joins in the conspiracy. He chooses Absalom's side. Chris?
Was he one of them that was tricked into going up with them, or did he actively go with them?
No, he willfully chooses Absalom, and his actions after this are going to bear that out too.
So then, like the other 200 that left, they were tricked, but then actually just went over to doing this.
Yep, and what happens in chapter 16 is going to advance that further. So you're getting at something that is going to be advanced further in the next chapter. Yeah, so Ahithophel used to be David's counselor, but then he turns his back on David and decides that he's going to be the brains behind Absalom's operations. And Ahithophel is a smart guy. It is said of him that he was like his advice was as good as inquiring of the Lord. So, gifted advisor. Ittai the Gittite. I just love saying that name, Katie.
He's a
Yeah, so he's a military leader who's actually from Gath. He's a Philistine. But he is devoted to following David. And he's going to have a role to play as this whole thing plays out as well. Zadok and Abiathar. Priests, right? All right, and they're the ones who bring the ark out first and then take it back into Jerusalem. Then you have Ahimaaz and Jonathan. Who are they? The sons of the priests, right? What's their role? What are they going to be doing? Chris? Yeah, they're going to kind of be the messengers, relaying things from what's going on in Jerusalem over to David and his camp. And then we have Hushai the Archite. Megan.
David's friend who would go back to Jerusalem to try to frustrate Ahithophel's advice.
Yeah, so Hushai is a close confidant of David, and he kind of plays the role of top secret double agent. Yep, he's the spy. He's the Israelite 007 here. So he's going to go and kind of pretend like he's in Absalom's side, pretend like he is devoting himself to Absalom, but what he's really going to be doing is gathering information and trying his best to throw a wrench into Ahithophel's works in the counsel that he gives. Number 3, cite any examples you can find from 1 Samuel 15 of someone exhibiting qualities of a good political leader. There are any number of things that you could cite here, and same for the next question. Examples of somebody being a good political leader. Liz.
Eventually, David leaves everything up to God for the ultimately.
Okay. Yeah, eventually, and we hear about it toward the end of the chapter, David's going to ultimately leave everything up to God. David essentially says, I'm at peace. I trust in the Lord. However this works out. So a leader who ultimately trusts that all is in God's hands. I think that's a pretty good quality of a good political leader. Yes, Chris?
He's actively trying to save people's lives by leaving Jerusalem, because he knows if he stays in Jerusalem and Absalom comes, then there's going to be like a siege and battle, people are going to get caught in the crossfire. And then he also actively tries to get rid of people who are following him out of Jerusalem, saying, hey, no, stay here, because I don't want you to have to be, get the same consequence that I do with whatever happens here.
Yeah, you give David credit here. He kind of he's reading the situation, and is his chief concern being able to stay sitting on the throne in Jerusalem? No. He is concerned that there are going to be people in Jerusalem who, if he stays, that people in Jerusalem are going to be put to the sword. He doesn't want that to happen. So it seems that he actually does have the best interests of the people at heart, because he is willing to get off the throne and go kind of into temporary exile. Any other examples of a good political leader before we get to the bad examples? And by the way, the bad examples aren't just all one-sided here. They don't just apply to one guy. Professor? There's something to be said for having some political savvy here, and David seems to have it. You know, for as much as he's willing to kind of abdicate the throne and go away and leave Jerusalem, you know, he's not giving up entirely, is he? Now, he's trying to put people in place to keep him informed. and to keep a good read on the situation, and to actually kind of, what's the word? Subversion, to get some subversion going in Absalom's camp. So, yeah, for better or for worse, David does have some political savvy. Qualities, or defining qualities of a bad political leader that you see in 2 Samuel 15. There are no examples of a bad political leader. No, just kidding. Chris, and then Professor.
I mean, someone mentioned before having their own agenda. I mean, that's Absalom to a T. He spent 10 years getting to this point. Like that's why I said he's pretty clever. Just a master plan.
Yep. Absalom is conniving, and he's willing to play the long game here. This isn't just one day he decided, oh, I'm gonna rebel. No, he was sowing these seeds for years. Professor.
Referencing the exact same thing I just referenced, David put Hushai and the priests, Zadok and Abiathar, as well as their kids, into a really dangerous situation. And, so while there was shrewdness for David, boy, it put those people into a tough spot.
Yeah. He's putting the priests into a tough spot, and their sons, and Hushai, because you can't imagine that if Hushai gets found out that it's going to be like, oh, well, okay, well, just leave, that's fine. One thing that Sue, did you have one? I saw your hand up before. I'm sorry. Not to put you on the spot.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Depending upon how, where's the verse? I'm not able to find it. Where was it? Yeah, in verse 7, there it is. There's some debate about this whole 4 years thing, but assuming that is truly 4 years, David just lets Absalom go and undermine him at the city gate for 4 years. Doesn't do anything about it. You kind of asleep at the wheel a little bit there, David? Yeah. Any others? Qualities of a bad political leader that you see? 2 Samuel 15. With that, let's go into 2 Samuel chapter 16. So David has left the people in their various roles are kind of in place, and 2 Samuel chapter 16 is kind of a bunch of positioning for the future. Bunch of political positioning. So if you would, with me, follow along. 2 Samuel 16. When David had gone a short distance beyond the summit, there was Ziba, the steward of Mephibosheth, waiting to meet him. He had a string of donkeys saddled and loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisins, 100 cakes of figs, and a skin of wine. The king asked Ziba, "Why have you brought these?" Ziba answered, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread and fruit are for the men to eat, and the wine is to refresh those who become exhausted in the wilderness." The king then asked, "Where is your master's grandson?" Ziba said to him, "He is staying in Jerusalem." That Mephibosheth, by the way, that's who he's referring to. "He is staying in Jerusalem because he thinks today the Israelites will restore to me my grandfather's kingdom." Mephibosheth, just to remind you, is Saul's grandson, the son of Jonathan. Okay. Then the king said to Ziba, "All that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours." "I humbly bow," Ziba said. "May I find favor in your eyes, my lord the king." As David approached Bahurim, a man from the same clan as Saul's family came out from there. His name was Shimei, son of Gera, and he cursed as he came out. He pelted David and all the king's officials with stones, though all the troops in the special guard were on David's right and left. As he cursed, Shimei said, get out, you murderer, you scoundrel. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has given the kingdom into the hands of your son, Absalom. You've come to ruin because you are a murderer. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head. But the king said, what does this have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? If he is cursing because the Lord said to him, curse David, who can ask, why do you do this? David then said to Abishai and all his officials, my son, my own flesh and blood is trying to kill me. How much more then this Benjamite? Leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look upon my misery and restore to me his covenant blessing instead of his curse today. So David and his men continued along the road while Shimei was going along the hillside opposite him, cursing as he went and throwing stones at him and showering him with dirt. The king and all the people with him arrived at their destination exhausted, and there he refreshed himself. Meanwhile, Absalom and all the men of Israel came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him. Then Hushai the Archite, David's confidant, went to Absalom and said to him, long live the king! Long live the king! Absalom said to Hushai, so this is the love you show your friend? If he's your friend, why didn't you go with him? Hushai said to Absalom, no, the one chosen by the Lord, by these people, and by all the men of Israel, his I will be, and I will remain with him. Furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I not serve the Son? Just as I served your father, so I will serve you. Absalom said to Ahithophel, give us your advice. What should we do? Ahithophel answered, sleep with your father's concubines, whom he left to take care of the palace. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself obnoxious to your father, and the hands of everyone with you will be more resolute. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and he slept with his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now in those days, never mind. We're stopping at verse 22, because we're going to pick up with verse 23 next week. So, questions 1 through 6 on 2 Samuel 16. We'll give you a little bit of time to go through those. Once again, you're encouraged to work with the people around you. All right. Sorry if you're not all the way through, but for the sake of time, once again, when I feel like, I'm only asking like 5 questions per chapter, that'll give us enough time. Boy, woefully wrong again. But that's okay. Identifying the key players in this chapter. There are just 2 of them this time, Ziba and Shimei. Who is Ziba? He is the, Chris? Servant of Jonathan's son, Saul's grandson, Mephibosheth, whom David had invited to live with him in the palace. Okay, so it seems that Ziba has some really distressing news regarding Mephibosheth. You know, that Mephibosheth has kind of taken up allegiance with Absalom. We find out later that this is just a bald-faced lie on Ziba's part. He brought out these provisions to provide for David and his people, to curry favor with David, and he's thinking, well, while I'm at it, maybe I can get all of David's favor for myself. He'll disown Mephibosheth, and then, sure enough, David says here, well, everything that belonged to your master now belongs to you. Okay, well, score. It seems like it's going to work for Ziba. It's actually not going to work out that well for Ziba, but that happens later. So anyway, Ziba is not this, benevolent character. He's definitely got his own motivations. Shimei. Who's he? Katie.
Well, he's this crazy guy that is, he's related to Saul in some way, and he's calling all these curses down and attempting to stone David and his men by himself, apparently.
If you try to picture it in your mind, it almost seems comical. Like, you're one guy, what are you going to do? There's still hundreds of men with, what are you going to do? Come on. This guy's of the same clan as Saul was. So there's extended family connections there. And so he is loyal to Saul. So he views David as this interloper, this person who shouldn't be in charge because Saul was the rightful king. And yeah, he pronounces curses on David, and he's throwing rocks at them. He's up on a hill as they're kind of passing by, and he's throwing dirt at them and rocks at them. Almost seems like something out of like a Monty Python. Anyway, Chris. Oh, goodness. David is in his mid to late 50s. I don't know those numbers off the top of my head.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been, I think, at least a couple decades, but don't quote me on that. I would have to look that up. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. Absolutely. It has been a long time.
And there aren't a lot of time markers in this
Yeah.
account, so I don't know that we need to be able to nail it down exactly.
Explain Absalom's skepticism regarding Hushai.
He was David's friend.
Yeah. So Absalom's thinking, what? You were supposedly David's friend, and now you're saying that you're going to be my friend? Well, if you're willing to turn your back on your friend, well then, what is it? Can I expect the same thing from you? But the point also should be made that, I mean, Absalom, that's kind of true of everybody that's following you right now, because just about everybody at one point was loyal to David. So, your closest advisor, Ahithophel here, was once David's advisor too. So Absalom seems to have some savvy for being skeptical. However, let's also understand, Absalom, where everything came from and where all the people who are on your side came from. At Ahithophel's advice, Absalom took his father's concubines as his own in a rather public fashion. Explain this. They set up a tent on the roof so it could be visible to everybody. Explain the significance of this politically, and then according to 2 Samuel chapter 12.
But just the impression he is taking over.
Okay, yeah. It gives the impression he's taking over. That's what Joyce said. Chris, what do you got?
Showing
Okay, yeah, he's acting like he can do whatever he wants, like he's untouchable, like he's the king. Did you catch what else was mentioned here as to the reason for that? Politically, in verse 21. Israel will hear that you have made yourself obnoxious to your father, and the hands of everyone with you will be more resolute. So this is going to embolden your followers to be against your father. This is going to make people pick sides because you are doing something so blatant. Why is this significant according to 2 Samuel chapter 12? Katie.
It's fulfilling the prophecy that was made when David slept with Bathsheba.
Yeah, remember that God had told David through Nathan that just as he had done this shameful thing in secret, somebody was going to take his wives, his women, and sleep with them out in the open in the broad daylight in front of everybody. And look, that calamity comes upon David from within his own household, just as God said. This kind of goes back to the fact that when you go outside of God's design, it only makes a mess. For the sake of time, we're going to skip 5 and 6. We're going to go down to the God's Word in Our Lives questions. Explain what you think is the biggest takeaway lesson from these two chapters regarding, letter A, engaging in the political realm as a Christian, and letter B, responding to the wrongs of others. Put some thought to one or both of those. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and we'll take some of your thoughts in a couple minutes. Well, 15 seconds here to wrap up your thoughts. And we'll let you pick one here. Explain what you think is the biggest takeaway lesson in these two chapters regarding engaging in the political realm as a Christian and or responding to the wrongs of others. What do you got? What do you think? I have just a couple minutes yet. Chris.
Politics it's just a messy business. I think it's really hard for Christians to, like if you're a politician and you're a Christian, there has to be so many daily struggles. I mean,
Yeah, make no mistake about it, being a political leader and a Christian at the same time is incredibly challenging. Because you are surrounded by a system in which, it's kind of every man for himself type deal, and win at all costs, and the end justifies the means, and that's tough. That is really tough. But at the same time, does that mean that as a Christian, okay, well, I just got to get done what I need to get done from a political standpoint, come what may, so if I have to, check my Christian hat at the door, that's what I got to do for the sake of the greater good? Should that be our attitude? No, it shouldn't. David could have done a lot of things, if he were to check his believer hat at the door. He could have gotten down in the muck and the mire with Absalom and fought fire with fire. But by and large, he didn't. I mean, in some respects he did, but in some important respects he didn't. Okay, other thoughts? Biggest takeaway regarding either engaging in the political realm as a Christian or responding to the wrongs of others.
Try to right the wrongs. You have to have savvy. You have to have forgiveness, but go on with whatever is good for the good of the country.
Okay. So yeah, kind of, Joyce is kind of trying to take both of them together here. You, as a political leader, you want to try to right the wrongs and bring about justice, but do so in a way that is that's God pleasing. And again, we just kind of talked about how challenging that can be. Katie.
I guess responding to the wrongs of others, like with Shimei, he was like, okay, well, maybe God's telling him to do this. So remembering that God has a plan for you, but he also has a plan for others, and it's just our plans are not always on the same path.
There is a lot to be gleaned from how David treats that situation with Shimei. Here David is the divinely anointed rightful king of Israel, and he's having a guy not only cursing him, but throwing rocks at him as he passes by. David, as the rightful king, surrounded by 600 of his men, you think he could maybe do something about that? Yup, he could, but he doesn't. He could have had the guy's head chopped off. What was it? Abishai wanted to do that. Who's this dead dog who's insulting my lord the king? Let me go cut his head off. No, don't do that. Wow. It's things like that kind of make you go, okay, maybe I can understand why a Philistine like Ittai is willing to follow David, despite being a Philistine. I think there's a lot to be said. When we're wronged, boy, the reaction of the sinful nature is, don't get mad, get even. Get back at him. Teach him a lesson. Maybe instead approach a situation with calm. Keep a larger view that there's more at stake here than just me and my pride and my ego. Treating others with grace and not holding their wrongs against them. Picking your battles a little bit. Okay, if somebody's going to treat me that way, that's fine. That's on them.
Well, actually, it was sort of inconsequential. It wasn't worth them doing anything about it.
Yeah, Joyce said it was inconsequential. It was like it wasn't even worth doing anything about it, right? But having the level head, right? To realize that and to not jump off in anger right away. Well, it has definitely been an ugly situation that has been set up. Next week we will see how this all plays out and how it all ends up with Absalom's rebellion. Let's close with prayer, please. I thank you, my heavenly Father, through Jesus Christ, your dear Son, that you have kept me this night from all harm and danger. Keep me this day also from sin and every evil, that all my doings in life may please you. Into your hands I commend my body and soul and all things. Let your holy angel be with me, that the wicked foe may have no power over me. Amen. If you've been to church, have a good rest of your weekend. Go Pack Go. And if you haven't been to church, go to church.